உள்ளதல துள்ள உணர் உள்ளது உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளல்லற உள்ளத்தே உள்ளதா உள்ளம் எனும் உள்ள பொருள் உள்ளல் எவன் உள்ளத்தே உள்ளபடி உள்ளதே உள்ளல் உணர்வாயே. Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been meditating on the verses of Ulladu Narpadu. We have moved to verse number 21 this week. To bring it to context, the whole work is divided into the three segments of Viveka, Vichara and Anubhava. The Viveka verses are once again divided into the first 4 verses covering the whole range of the work, 5, 6, 7 covering the world, how the reality of the world is actually the unchanging consciousness. Then 8 to 22 we find is on the root I or the Ishvara, the I based or dependent on which everything else arises. So it is about God, it is about Ishvara, and in that we have moved on to the last part, 20, 21, 22, which directly use the word Kadavul or Talaivan. So in the 8th verse, Bhagavan would have said, Eppayarit Tevuruviletinum Apperuruvil Apporulai Kanvariyadu Ayinum Ammeipporulin Unmayil Tan Unmayai Ordu Ondrudale Unmayil Kanvi. What is true darshan of God? We may call him by names. That is but a way or a means to have darshan of that which is beyond all names and forms. But what is real seeing? To search for or to seek one's own truth in the existing truth of the Supreme Being, and to find that there is no difference between these two truths, that one's own truth is the same as the truth of the Supreme, and merge into it and abide as it. To abide as that singular Supreme truth is real darshan, Bhagavan would have said. And that exact verse Bhagavan is going to delineate in the next 2 verses, 21 and 22. 21, Bhagavan will talk about seeing, and 22, he will talk about knowing. In one sense, the seeing, if we take it as a power, the omnipotence of God is obviously the highest omnipotence is to see God. The omniscience, what is the greatest knowledge? Is to know God. So both omnipotence and omniscience, Bhagavan merges into omnipresence, that which is the greatest secret according to chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan brings all that into these verses. The culmination of karma, bhakti and yoga margas, the Raja Yoga too, finds its culmination in these 2 verses. Raja Yoga, if one can inquire into it in chapter 9, is nothing but to offer everything to the omnipresence of God. It is Paramaguhyam, he says. It is the greatest secret that you cannot say within, without. Now, therefore, these 2 verses, 21 and 22, we will find is the culmination of karma, bhakti and yoga margas. Then 23, 24, 25, 26, these verses are still part of Viveka, but Bhagavan will point us to the root of all problems. In these 4 verses, Bhagavan will sum up that all the miseries, all the sorrows, all the problems arise due to one factor, and that factor will be delineated in, or the Viveka about that factor, the Ahankara, will be given in 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. They form the Vichara segment, the crux of the work or the Abhyasa to the Sadhaka. The 27, 28, 29, 30. The 31 to 40 form the Anubhava of the sage. So that is how the work is laid out. And we find ourselves in verse number 21. So in one sense, half of the work has been gone through. Now we are in the second half in that sense. But still, Bhagavan is explaining the depth of what is really that one holding which everything arises, or what is that Ishvara, what is the reality of Ishvara. Let us go into the verse. Tannaithan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Pannul Unmai Ennayenin, Tannaithan Kanalevan, Tan Onral, Kana Vonade, Talaivan Kanalevan, Unadal Kan. That is the verse. Tannaithan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Pannulunmai Ennayenin, Tannaithan Kanalevan, Tan Onrar Kana Vonade Talaivar, Kanalevan Unadal Kan Evayum Kanum. So, as we were reflecting, this verse is the omnipotence or the ability to see God. What is real seeing of God? The next verse is on the omniscience or the ability to know God. What is that? Both are going to be taken to omnipresence. So omnipresence, it removes all doubts about omnipotence. It establishes omnipotence and removes all doubts about omnipotence. It establishes omniscience and removes all doubts about omniscience, and merges both omnipotence and omniscience in itself, because there are no two. Only in the presence of two there can be a potency or a sciency. Here, since there is no two, it is all going to be taken to the omnipresent one, Ulla Porul. But let's take it as the verse takes us. Bhagavan says in the first phrase, Tannaithan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Pannulunmai Ennayenin. Many of the scriptures reduce, for our sake, the whole of spiritual sadhana into these two elements. One, Tannaithan Kanal, or one, to see oneself, is the same as Talaivan Tanai Kanal, is the same as having darshan of God. Say many scriptures. And what is the truth behind this phrase, this statement? How can knowing oneself be the same as seeing God? Tannaithan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Pannulunmai Ennai. Many of the philosophies, it all reduce itself, they all reduce themselves to this, that one has to have the enlightenment to have the darshan of the reality of God, or one should have the enlightenment to be a light unto oneself, to know the truth of oneself. Both are same, say the scriptures. If you take the first four noble truths, then we have Hinayana and Mahayana. Hinayana is the narrow path or the small boat where Atmavichara is included or is inquired into. The Mahayana is the big boat to see the God, to see what is the truth behind everything. But both are same. Both culminate into the one truth. So in many scriptures, not only in many scriptures, in many religions, we find this particular point. If you take Christianity, you find the same point. The offering of everything to God. Whatever you may possess, whatever you may see, whatever you may know, whatever you are, everything to God, that is something that is present in that path also. But what exactly is this is not really available that clearly or that directly as made available by Bhagavan to us. In this verse, Bhagavan says, Tannaitan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Pannul Unmai Ennayane. First he defines, many scriptures are present who all point that to know yourself or to see yourself or to see God or to know God are one and the same supreme truth. What does this exactly mean? Bhagavan says, Tannaitan Kanalavan, Tan Undral Kanavanade. So that is the second statement of this verse. Tannaitan Kanalavan, Tan Undral Kanavanade. This Tannai is commented on by Kanakamman and by Sadhuvam Swamigal a little bit with leeway for us to understand. Kanakamman takes us to the Mayasam. The Tam of Kanakamman is the singular Tam, is the singular I. For instance, when we inquire into the search for that on which everything is dependent, for instance, let's say that we are thinking of a particular person, then we have a desire to meet him. When we think of him as the Nama and Rupa, that is because we think of ourselves as Nama and Rupa, then the desire to see him actually requires a plan to take a train or to take a bus or to take a flight and travel the distance to that place and then fix up a meeting and go and see that person. But when we reduce the essence of that person to the I, Nan Redi Elum, and in Bhagavan in verse number 7 says, the consciousness within, when it rises, then the whole world arises. And therefore that consciousness within everyone is the same. Therefore, when I reduce that person not to his Nama and Rupa, but to the I within, to the consciousness within, because the Nama and Rupa, along with the world, arise only after the consciousness rises as the I, then to see him is to hold the I common to me and that. Because when that thought arises, the best way to have darshan of that person is to inquire for whom is this thought. The thought is for me. When I hold the I hold the essence of that person and my own essence as one. The same is applicable to a deity to whom we pray. There is some difficulty for one of our family members and we want to pray to that deity. For instance, Narasimha Swami, or let us say some other deity, we want in a particular place, then immediately the Nama and Rupa and that place becomes available to us in the mind. Then we have to transport ourselves, the body, our own Nama and Rupa to that place and then have darshan. But what is Bhagavan saying? The consciousness within that being, within Narasimha Swami, is the Parabrahma, Only when that arises, then the world arises. Same so with a small ego also. Only when the consciousness arises, everything arises. So the best way when I want to pray is to ask, for whom is this thought? So one of the names of Narasimha Swami in the Ashtottram is Om Parabrahmane Namaha, the consciousness within everyone. So the darshan there would be to hold the eye. So that is what Kannaitan Karnal says Kanakamal. That thought is the Mayaham. He is not Nandakumar's darshan of eye. It is not this jiva's or that jiva's eye. It is Hariyadishara Jivara Akavarisa Guhai. Let us say in that Guhai there is an eye thought, not the Ariva, but the rising of eye thought. That is what holding which everything arises, says Bhagavan in these verses. Now to see that deity is to know the source of that eye. That means to go to the Ariva from which that eye has arisen. And that eye and this eye are not different. Tannaitanam Karnal, according to Kanakamat, is that eye, the inquiry, Arivam Ariyamayam, Yarchandram Mudalam, Tannai Ari, Tannai Munile Padakkai, Iva Yarchandra Ammudalam Tannai Ari, Nanamam Yanam, Yarchandra Ammudalam Tannai Ari, Nigalvu, Irapu Edirvu, Iva Yarchandra Ammudalam Tannai Ari. காலமும் தேசமும் ஆர்க்கென்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறி இவ்வுடல் ஆர்க்கென்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறி உலகு ஆர்க்கென்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறி விதிமதி ஆர்க்கென்றம் முதலாம் தன்னை அறி. That sun is what Kalakamal refers. That eye which is the source of depending on which vidimadi arises. But Sadhu Swami does not necessitate our requirement or require us to make that leap even in dhyana. Right now, it's not necessary. You just take your ego and inquire into it, you will come there. So Sadhu Swami gives us some room that you need not meditate on it right now. You can consider that the ego arises, then the nama and rupa of the God also arises. That should not be taken as real darshan. It is only a means to see the God. In the truth of that God, which is pre-existing everything, to inquire into one's own truth. Let the name Narasimha Swami be there, but what is my truth in the truth of Narasimha Swami? Who am I? So still, Sadhu Swami synthesize the ego itself. There itself also, we all agree there is only one I within us. Though there are the psychological conditions called multiple personality disorder, and even in order, we have many castes. We are this, we are son, brother, father. We are so many roles we play. We are an employee, we are a devotee, we are the master, we are the servant. All these castes. But still, whenever you ask anybody, how many are there inside you, or how many are you? Obviously, the answer will be one. So, even to the practical purposes, one can say Tan Ondral. The I is only one inside. Whether we take Kanakamal's universal I, Neyaham, Arunachalam's I, or you take Sadhu Swamigal's practical allowing us the room of taking the normal I itself, there is only one I. Of course, we find Shiva Prakasha Pillai directly taking the common eye of all. Tan Ondral, he means the Tan of God. Tan Ondral, Kanavanade. Since that I inside is only one, Tan Ondral, Kanavanade. Can you complete the task, the first task of Kannaitan Karnal? If we keep inquiring, if we keep at every point and something arises, instead of pursuing the Nama and Rupa, which will take into Kala and Desha, instead of pursuing that, if one can pursue the essence of that as the I, because in that it is also filled by us. The I, the ego is also filled by us. So hold the essence, hold the rasa as the I. So when you hold that, then it will take you to the it will take you to the universal life. Simply one thought after another, keep the process going. Then you will come up to Ulladu Narpadu, where Bhagavan aggregates all the Nama and Rupa as Arivu, Ariyamai in 4 verses. He aggregates everything as first person, second person, third person. So Bhagavan aggregates the multiplicity into just 2 or 3 names, and he says that those 2-3 names also arise only holding on to the I. It's obvious to us that I is what we have been recognizing or calling as God. The one depending on whom the entire knowledge and ignorance arise, depending on whom the faith and free will arise, on which way it can be. So I leave it to you, but both are all right. That if you keep practicing, you will come to that. But to be a serious, to complete our bhakti sadhana and to allow the jnana to be a culmination of jnana is bhakti varam. It is the or the mauna is jnana varam, says Muruganar. Jnana is a natural culmination of bhakti. If we want to inquire like that, of course, Bhagavan says jnana or bhakti is jnana's mother. It is all these different ways of putting are there, but when we come to jnana, the differences are eliminated. If you keep that in mind, one of the primary tasks in jnana is elimination of Veda Bhavana. All the Veda Bhavanas are eliminated in jnana. So, in whatever way you take, whether as the individual life or the universal life, Tan Undral Karnavanade, the very act of seeing gets absorbed in the enquiry. There is no karma, not only seeing, but all the actions, including omnipotence, is absorbed in the omnipresence. So that is why I said this verse gathers all the omnipotence, all the powers of God, and absorbs it into the omnipresence. Now this is what we find in Raja Yoga in chapter 9. Chapter 9 is, let us say, the culmination of, in one sense, culmination of the individual's journey in karma, bhakti, karma sannyasa, and yoga. Raja Yoga, Raja Bhuktya it is, Raja secret. The secret is, of course, omnipresence. That is where the Mahayoga, the yoga, Ananya Bhakti. In the 10th verse of that chapter, he uses the word Ananya. The Ananya Bhakti, which is what we find in verses 8, 9, and 10 of Upadesha Saram. Bhagavan is bringing that here right now in the verse 21, 22. He is bringing us to that point where he is gathering all the other parts and bringing us to a culmination of omnipresence, that they are all going to be absorbed. The karma marga, the bhakti marga, the yoga marga are all going to be absorbed in the 21st verse, in the omnipresence. Then 23 onwards, he is going to take us all these aways from the ego only, and he will take us further to Atma Vicharam. But all the other parts are included in Atma Vicharam. That is how the work building is there. So, Kanundral Kanavanade. The first phrase was Tannaittan Kanal, Talaivan Tanai Kanal, Ennum Vandu Ummai Ennai Tannaittan Kanal Evan, Kanundral Kanavanade. These two phrases, it means many scriptures are present which all indicate that the supreme truth is to know oneself, to see oneself, or it can be represented as knowing God, which are both same scriptures. What can this contradictory statement mean? That to know this fellow is to know God. And chapter 9 is full of contradictory statements because omnipresence is like that. The very nature of omnipresence is, if you see the eye vision going up to this and up to 20 feet, the omnipresence is filling every gap of that, and it is filling that range of consciousness which is outside my vision, this range of consciousness which is below. I am talking of the spectrum, the light spectrum, and also behind me, everything is there. So it is not possible to see omnipresence. The omnipresence can be experienced directly only by merging and being the omnipresence. There is no other way to have darshan of omnipresence of God. So Bhagavan teaches the omnipresence of God, which subsumes or which consumes or which makes it food. What it makes food? It makes food of omnipotence and omniscience. The omnipresence consumes all that. So since the omnipresence itself consumes all that, we are going to come to the last part. The first two phrases mean when all the scriptures say these contradictory statements, that just knowing yourself, as it is said in the Greek legend, know yourself, know thyself, that is the same as knowing God. How can these two things, one small presence within this, seem to be stuck in this prison of body? Knowing that, how can it be that immanent one? How can it be the knowledge of the transcendent? Now that contradictory paradoxical statement, how can it be true? Tanondral kanavanade. Tannaitan kanalevan. Take the first part. Is it possible to see yourself? No. Because there are no two eyes. There is no seeing eye and seen eye. When we were discussing this with Murali, our neighbor Bhagavan's devotee, so he was saying, I was describing it as to see and to be seen, which is the traditional way. But he introduced that. No, there are no two, one to know or see and one to reveal. There are no two eyes. If we have to take Murali's words, then there is no separate eye to reveal itself. There is only one eye. So the very act of seeing, the very act of all actions, gets subsumed in vichara. The whole of omnipotence about which we are worried. What is going to happen tomorrow? Will we get the project? Will we get this done? Will that happen? Will that not happen? In this the omnipresence, all the omnipotence present in time and space are consumed by the omnipresence. It just consumes, and all worries about all that become non-existent. That's why Bhagavan says, hold the self. Tanundral kanavanade. You cannot see yourself. Talevan kanalevan, the last part. Talevan kanalevan. Who is to see or how to see? That which is the substrate, that which is the adhara of the tongue. Talevan kanalevan unadal kan. To become food of God is real seeing. That food of God is going to be our focus. If we can assimilate the rest of it, then the whole sadhana comes down to being the food of God or becoming the food of God. Let us just gather the verse again into those three component parts, gather them together, then go into becoming the food of God, which is what we will be doing as sadhana. To gather the three parts together, all the scriptures tell these two as the supreme truth, know thyself or know God. Now, who is to know oneself? As the self is one, there is no way one can see oneself. Then if one cannot see oneself, where is who is the one who can see that which is the substrate, the one who is transcendent? Kadavul, kadandu nirpavan. Tannayum kadandu nirpavan. Who to see, how to see? That very act of seeing and everything that is possessible is to be offered as food of God. Unadal kan. Unadal kan, to be the food of the self is to be the self. To offer everything as food. Now that offering everything is present in Bhakti Marga, is present in Yoga Marga, and is practiced in Atma Vichara, as we will find. Atma Vichara is nothing but the constant yajna, the constant, we may build for a particular function, we may build a homa and do that yajna for some time and then it is over. But here the yajna is the constant offering of everything that you can possess and yourself to the Supreme Self. Unadal kan. So we are going to focus on that part, which is the essence of karma, bhakti and yoga. because we are going to move to Jnana from the next segment. In Jnana too, Bhagavan will now bring the problem and solution as both within us. When he brings the problem, the entire set of problems within us, will be both astounded as well as greatly relieved, because there is nothing to blame outside. There is no problem outside of us. The entire problem is bundled up, and in 23, 24, 25, 26, Bhagavan is going to pinpoint that this is where the entire root problem lies. Attend to this only, it is the equivalent of attending to everything else. But we are running ahead. Let's come back, slow down. The running ahead was to connect our sadhana in bhakti, our sadhana in ethics, our sadhana in karma yoga, our sadhana in karma sannyas, our sadhana in the yoga marga in chapter 9, the Raja Yoga. All that culminates in this verse, in verse number 21 and in verse number 22. As I said, in verse number 22, the Madhikolikande, Bhagavan is going to take omniscience, the knowing part. But let's come to the essence of verse number 21, which is offering oneself to God. Now, if you take any theology, any religion, the offering part to God is first to offer whatever is good. Whatever is good that we have received, offer it to God. It cannot be otherwise, because all those great ones say, what can it be that you can have as something good, except that which you have received? Our hands are always like this, and whatever we say we have is nothing but a bhiksha given by the Supreme. What can you have as good that you can point out was not received by you? It was all received. So first of all, we have to offer all that good, whether it is in terms of knowledge, whether it is in terms of comfort of living, whether it is in terms of lineage, whether it is in terms of what is the spiritual information we have, all that you have as good in you, first we have to offer. We have to understand that the jiva by itself could never have come upon any of this. So all that, offer as yajna, offer as food, unadal khan. Let God have it as food. Now what happens when God has something as food is very interesting. Bhagavan says, when a tiger has a goat as a prey, what happens to the goat is that it becomes the tiger. Of course, in Jnana, it was always the tiger. But for our understanding, when something consumes you, and this is exactly what he says to Kapali Shastri. Kapali Shastri asks in Saddarshana Bhashya, "Oh Bhagavan, what is the bodily experience of Jnana?" Bhagavan says it is of bliss. You literally become that which consumes you. And that which consumes you is limitless bliss. So that limitless bliss is eating you. When you offer yourself, that limitless bliss is consuming you. And when it is eating you, there is full of bliss. The whole body becomes filled with vibrations of bliss. Then he says, not even that. It becomes the center of bliss. Then he says, not even that. It becomes it becomes completely peaceful. But the whole journey, as you offer yourself to God and as he consumes you, as he eats you, is that which is eaten. That fellow who was afraid and having possessing this and that becomes filled with bliss, the happiness of God, happiness that God really is, the Ananda, Satchit Ananda, Ananda Swarupa. The bodily experience is that, then the body itself is gone. The body is a whole mass of the vibration of bliss. Then there is no body to hold, there is only peace. Once form becomes Ananda Swarupa, and from Ananda Swarupa, the Ananda gets merged into the Jnana, the peace of fullness of knowledge. That is the bodily experience. So that which eats you, that which is eaten becomes that. So in one of the Girivalams, that there was an old devotee who had darshan of Bhagavan, Shri S.K. Narayan Rao sir, who was living very nearby. So in one of the occasions, we had taken him, his family, to Tiruvannamalai and his son had come from Australia. And we were in one of the guest houses there, and we were doing, the whole family was doing Girivalam. They had two children, the Sunaina, and I forget the son's name right now, but Sunaina was studying 10th standard or 9th standard in their curriculum, the Australian curriculum. And in the earlier part itself, somehow this discussion had come about the eating and the eaten, and I had shared that Bhagavan says that whatever is eaten becomes the eater. That it may lose. See, when we keep a vegetable in fridge, what happens is that if we keep it with the comb, with that node at the end where it is connected to the plant, we will find that the comb has a lot of water, and it gives, even in the fridge also there is slow perishing of the vegetable. But the comb supplies water to the main, because it knows in its death, in its going away, lies its survival. The seeds in the fruit is what is going to become another brinjal plant. So in the nature, it is there that there is the learning that I will continue to exist only if I give up the present form. So the offering of oneself is right there before our eyes. The medicine kai, if we keep it with the kambu, it is there for 20 days in the fridge. If we remove the kambu and put it for looking good, then in 5 days, 6 days, it perishes. Because the kambu selflessly gives whatever water it has to the body of the thing still. So I asked Sunaina, because later in the Girivalam, earlier in the Girivalam, right at the beginning, I had shared with her that whatever is eaten, like the Bhagavan's example of the tiger and the goat really becomes the tiger. Whatever energy is contained in that food becomes the consumer. Now, I had told Sunaina that, and later in the Girivalam, she was the youngest in the group. So she alone was given an ice cream by her father somewhere after the Adiyannamalai. And she ate it very happily, and she had finished it. So near the Bhagavan's bridge, I asked her, now what happened to the ice cream? And she was so bright that she could immediately say it has now become Sunaina. So the ice cream has become Sunaina, she said. Similar is the journey here into the self. Unadal Khan. First of all, we offer all that is good. The great ones say, what is it that you can have as good in you, whether bodily or the human birth or the satsanga or anything? That was not given to you. It was all given to you as a limited being. It is all provided to you. So offer first all that to God and thank Him with great gratitude for all the blessings, all the goodness received. First hand over. The moment you hand over all the good nature, good things, then all the sins, all the negatives that we have done now become available, and one has the readiness to offer that. Having first offered all that, then these two were part of the experimentations of the team. If all the good were received as part of the experimentations of this whole creation, they have come and they have been received by me as part of this whole evolution and involution that God has created, and I am a little bit small thing. All the good things in me have come by that churning. So from where all the bad things could have come? They are all mistakes made during the process of this involution and evolution. How can it be mine? So offer all of them to the whole team, or then once you offer all the good as the food to the team, to the whole creation or to God, and then all the errors you have made, the so-called sins, which are all the wrong steps we take in the search for God, it is allowed that you can offer them now. And once these two are completely offered, one is completely freed of all worship. So the Bhakti Marga says, then only the day-to-day miseries one has to offer. Then once one has completely offered all the good received and all the sins that one has incurred to that process, the whole creation, or to the creator, or to the one behind, then what remains in the Bhakti Marga statements is that there is no personal good or bad, there is no individual good or bad in such a one anymore. But in the sharing of this process of offering good and bad, every day one may have to go through some miseries for the benefit of the whole team. Now, the offering of that becomes the only job for such ones, such beings who are sharing God's work here. This is the path in Bhakti, that whatever God's work, which is the sharing of this becoming Unadal, allow everything to be the food of God, that alone one has to do. And in doing that, naturally for the bliss of the team, there will be some misery for the one who is sharing. So the day-to-day offering of that alone to God as food, that becomes that person's work. Without doership, it is offered back and God accepts that and consumes the person giving also. This is the Bhakti Marga description of the process. In Jnana Marga, this last description is also not there. It is automatic, that we will see later. But first we have to understand that the Atma Vichara we are going to see later includes all the Bhakti Marga we have learned, we have walked, and why the best worship of Bhagavan is to hold the eye. We will assimilate it and practice it. That this is the essence of what I have been worshipping him as. To hold the eye, to hold the ego and to take it to the source is the essence of all the surrenders that I have practiced so far, is what we are going to see. And that is where we come in this verse, that to see God is to offer everything as food of God. Whatever you have as good, whatever you can have, whatever you can make as error, you have made as error, you could make as error. Offer all that as food. The interesting part is only when you offer both can you offer yourself. That is what we will be seeing in Atma Vichara. Unless all the Mamakara is offered, the Ahankara cannot be offered. Similarly, in Atma Vichara we will find that unless the raising thought is offered, the I will not be available for offering. So the understanding of the Bhakti, the Unadal Khan, is going to help us in practicing Atma Vichara later. That Atma Vichara is nothing but becoming the food of the self, the Atman. That is what we are going to practice from verse 27, 28, 29 and 30. But let us sum up these together and only staying with omnipotence, because omniscience we are going to take up next, Madhikoli Kande. Let us gather all this that we have seen in this verse, that the main import of scriptural teachings is to know yourself or to know God. Both are same. Say Kanakamman, the Sadhuvan Swamigal, and Siva Prakasham Pillaival, that all the scriptures say both are the same. How can these two things be the same? The same is that entire operation of seeing, doing has to be given as food of God along with the eye. Why? Because to see yourself or the process of who, can there be two eyes? The eye is one, therefore the very process of seeing is eliminated, only stillness is left. If you cannot see yourself, then how can you see the adhara of yourself? That is also only stillness. That is also elimination of all doing. What is elimination of all doing and stillness? Whatever opportunity to do, to see is there, offer it as food of God. Unadal Khan. So that Unadal Khan is the essence of this entire verse. To become food of God. What? Everything. Whatever you see, whatever you eat, whatever you touch, whatever you have smelled, whatever you have heard, everything has to become food of God. Then only the eye also becomes food of God. And there is, as Bhagavan Kapali Shastri, one can literally feel being eaten alive. And the life becomes eternal from a life that is dependent on all these things which are perishable. When eaten by God, one can have the anubhava that one is moving from life that is terminable or that can be terminated because it feels it is dependent on perishable things. So that which is imperishable, avyaya, the avyaya vastu is consuming us. And what is the nature of the avyaya vastu? It is full of bliss. It is eternal bliss. And when it consumes us, as Bhagavan says to Kapali, the very process, the bodily experience is bliss. But one should not stop at that. The bliss should go on to verse number 22, which is the end of knowing also. But that is for the coming week with Bhagavan's grace. Let us practice this, Unadal Kant. Since we are coming the second round in Ulladu Narpadu, I have taken many liberties in including something that would be known later because we are doing the second round of investigating into these verses. So let us actually practice this till 8 o'clock when Akka will give us another view of this verse, which is so beautifully given to us by Bhagavan.
नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramanaka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self, manifest as Ramana, we are meditating on the verses of Ulladu Narpadu, given to us by the grace of Bhagavan through Muruganar Swami. Yesterday was the anniversary of Muruganar Swami, and perhaps we cannot find a better instance of a devotee who has actually become food unto Bhagavan, such as Muruganar Swami. And even such a Muruganar Swami, in fact, he could say, so much was he swallowed by Bhagavan that he could say, when the instance happened that a visitor said, our Guru asks us to chant the mantra and offer all the fruits of the mantra back to him. Then Bhagavan said, oh, the Guru takes away all the interest. And Muruganar Swami said, that Guru is far better. Our Guru, he eats up the capital also. He doesn't leave any capital behind. And Sadhu Om Swami says, in his song, he says, Bhagavan told me, Unnai kodu endru ketan, unadal, to become food unto him. What did he ask me for? Unnai kodu endru ketan. I want you to offer yourself fully to me. And he says, Naan odi olindalume vidamaatan. Even if I hide, anywhere I hide, he is going to find me out, and this is all he is going to ask me. He is going to ask me, give yourself to me. Unnai kodu, give yourself to me. Unadal. To give oneself completely. Because as Nandakumarji has brought out from the different angles of the great ones in their commentaries, how they have presented the oneness. See, how to see the self which is one. The moment we try to see, it will become divided. The moment we try to see it, there has to be one which sees and one which is seen. That was also a point which was brought out by the example which he gave, that who is the one who sees and who is the one to be seen? Which is the I? The one which is seeing or the one which is seen? So it is one. In the very first prayer verse of Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan already told us that because it is non-dual, one cannot meditate upon it. One has to be the self. Here, in this instance, Bhagavan is saying, become food. So, Nandakumarji pointed out two ways of becoming food, in a sense, that the expansion path and the submission path, the narrowing down, the one in which one melts away. As Bhagavan says in Ashtakam, like a sugar doll in the sea, one melts into the truth. Or he says in Aksharamanamale, Ambuvil Alipol, like a piece of ice in water, one has to become food unto the self. So there are two favorite stories of ours which would have been told numberless times, but they bear repetition like all beautiful things in our lives, like the staple food which we eat every day without tiring of it, the certain diets we never tire of. Each one of us has our own favorite staple food. which we would not tire of, no matter how many times it is repeated, day in and day out. Similarly, these stories, the one story of the path of expansion, if one may say, to become food by becoming the very one who eats or becoming everything. In one instance, actually, Bhagavan has told Jagadishwara Sastri, become the sun, then you do not feel heat. So when you become that, then there is, you have become, in a sense that you have become the very self, be the self. But this instance is not the one of expansion. The other one is when a devotee comes and asks Bhagavan, he says, he pleads with Bhagavan saying, I am a great sinner. I am such a great sinner that there is no redemption for me. But why has he come to Bhagavan? See, he has come only because he somewhere hopes for this redemption. But he tells Bhagavan, there is no redemption for me. Then Bhagavan says, all right, you want me to help you? Then what is the Guru Dakshina that you are going to offer? Exactly what Nanda Kumarji was explaining to us in the latter part of today's beautiful satsang. And the devotee is amazed because Bhagavan has never asked for Guru Dakshina. But Bhagavan says, I am asking now, what will you give me? And the devotee, of course, says, whatever you ask for, Bhagavan. The beauty is that nothing really belongs to us to give. But nonetheless, Bhagavan says, give, because we think it belongs to us. The need to give everything up, the need to surrender, the need to offer oneself arises because there is a wrong notion that something belongs to me, that I am a separate entity and I have in me good and bad. I have the potential to act and create good and bad, which I hold within me. Because of all these false notions, we are being asked to surrender what we are notionally holding. And so this devotee says, whatever you ask for Bhagavan. Bhagavan then says, all right, give me all the good in you. Whatever good deeds you might have performed, whatever the fruits of those good deeds may be, give them to me. And the devotee laughs and says, you seem to be mocking me because I have not done any good deed, nothing at all. How can I give you anything when the account is empty? It is zero balance. I have nothing to give you from that account, he says. Then Bhagavan says, all right, you don't want to give. No, it is not like that. The devotee says, then he says, all right, supposing by chance, by mistake also, unknowingly, if I have done anything good in my life, whatever the fruit of that good is, I very willingly and joyously, I give it all to you now, Bhagavan. And Bhagavan says, the deal is not yet over. Now give me the fruits of all the bad that you have done, all the sins that you say you have committed. Give me the fruits of all the negative things that you have done, all your negative actions. Give that to me. And the devotee is aghast. He starts trembling actually. He says, it is impossible for me to cast all this upon Bhagavan. The result of this is, it will be so catastrophic. How can I give that to Bhagavan? I cannot give that to Bhagavan. See, there also we have to give up everything. The good also has to be given up, which in one sense we may find difficult to give. But we may be ready to give it because it goes to Bhagavan. But what about the bad things? What about the negativities? If we hold it as our own, that continuation of the illusion will be there. And so, Bhagavan insists, if you don't want to give it, then you are on your own. Don't turn to me for help. Don't tell me that I should save you. Unless you are ready to pay the price, how can I save you? So, Krishna Bhikshu, who records this, says very beautifully that the bargaining between the devotee and Bhagavan went on for some time. But finally, Bhagavan said, unless you are ready to give this to me, unless you are ready to offer it to me, I cannot save you. I will not take up the responsibility unless you have totally given up everything to me, completely become food to me. And the devotee, because he was desperate, because he knew that he has no other recourse whatsoever. See, the point of desperation is what drives us to give ourselves up completely. It can be either the point of desperation or it has to be the leap of faith. Both can take us to surrendering ourselves completely. Since knowledge is there with us, knowledge of good and bad, knowledge of all what has been discussed in these 20 verses up to now, as very beautifully in one sort of a flow of a river kind of a flow, Nanda Kumarji said one after the other how all these are the aspects of the ego. So all that, since it is there, it has to be surrendered. And the devotee, because of his desperation, he says, choking, trembling, nonetheless, he says, Bhagavan, the fruits of all my negative deeds, I offer to you. And then Bhagavan says to him, now there is no good left in you. Now there is no bad left in you. You are as you are. Just remain as that. And Krishna Bhikshu says, a huge peace enveloped everyone who was seated there. So you can imagine the state of that person who had allowed himself to become food to Bhagavan. That intensity, the capacity, see, we may say we are giving something, but that man, he argued so much because he was actually going to give it. He was actually giving it. That's why, otherwise, to say I have given is no big deal. Because he was actually wondering and then actually bringing himself to completely give, to become food to Bhagavan. And when he became food to Bhagavan, that extraordinary peace filled him and filled everybody else around also at that time. The fragrance of a flower which blossoms, it wafts all around the atmosphere. And Krishna Bhikshu says, that man never came back again. He was never seen again in the ashram because that's all. He had disappeared into Bhagavan. He had given himself up to Bhagavan. And the story was over. Bhagavan gives every one of us the opportunity to become food unto him. If that intensity is not yet there in us, the graciousness of Bhagavan is such that he says we can become food unto him bit by bit, thought by thought, by offering each and every thought as it arises through the questioning, for whom is this thought? Who am I? So thought by thought we can become food unto him. As and when the identity arises, it can be offered back to him until a point when it ceases to rise. So, Bhagavan, in his infinite grace, handholds us and leads us into this point of total surrender, moment by moment, thought by thought, back to the source, to be swallowed again and again and again until completely the I is erased. It remains as only the bliss, as Nandakumarji said. It becomes the very bliss, the very thing that swallows it. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Ramananjali, Hridayanjali, Ramananjali, Ramananjali.